Thousands of children and families in Marion County struggle with issues like poverty, substance abuse, or mental and emotional illness. Many local services exist to help families in crisis, but families often don't know about these services or can't get to them. Unmet needs can result in child abuse, neglect, or juvenile delinquency. The Early Intervention Planning Council, through the Marion County Commission on Youth's Early Intervention and Prevention Initiative, has created a plan to give families earlier access to services in the hopes of reducing the number of children who get abused or neglected or turn to delinquent acts. We hope you enjoy our monthly program, Our Kids, Our Families, Our Communities, and learn more about the local services here to help you.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Our Kids, Our Families, Our Communities. I'm Shana Martin, the Director of the Early Intervention and Prevention Initiative at McCoy. Today's show is focused on back to school and how to get kids healthy and prepared and keep them healthy throughout the school year. Our previous back to school episode really focused on attendance and why it's important for kids to attend school the first day, but then attend throughout the school year. And we know that sometimes kids don't attend because of illnesses. So today we're really going to talk to a medical professional about how to keep kids healthy throughout the school year, what's important in terms of immunizations that are needed for them to get into school and to start school to begin with. So I want to welcome Dr. Michelle Cesana, who is a pediatrician through Riley, and then I will let you explain a little bit more about what you do at Riley and your role and some of your background.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm Michelle Cesana. I'm a pediatrician and a pediatric hospital, so I mainly take care of children who are hospitalized. I'm also the medical director for quality and safety at Riley and oversee our efforts in quality and safety. I was previously a general pediatrician in the community on the east side of Indianapolis, and so it was a great opportunity to be able to come to Riley and serve the kids that we take care of at Riley.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for being here today. Really appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to learning. I have two little ones, so it's always nice to learn how to keep them healthy because going to school is important, and I want to make sure that they're there every day, and I also want to make sure they're not bringing germs home to share with me.
Exactly.
So in terms of the first day, or even from the beginning, you know, kids at birth and when they start to do their well baby checks, there are a series of shots and immunizations that they have to have. Can you talk a little bit about sort of what those are, how parents need to make sure their kids have those, where they can go for that kind of information, and that kind of stuff?
Yes, I'd be happy to. So you're right. We have at various points in from birth all the way through teenage years and even adulthood that it's important to be going regularly to your primary care doctor for not only for vaccines but also for preventative medicine, preventative care to keep you healthy. So as infants, that's when they get the majority of their vaccines. And so there's a regular schedule for vaccines that pediatricians and primary care doctors have that's actually recognized nationally by the American Academy of Pediatrics as well as the Center for Disease Control, or the CDC. And so updates are made to that regularly as we learn new information and we have new vaccines come out. The vaccine schedule coincides with when we recommend kids are being seen by their pediatricians or family doctors to make sure they're on track for development and for making sure their diet is appropriate and their activity is appropriate. And so that at birth is 2, 4, and 6 months, and then again like at 12 to 15 months, 18 months, and then their vaccines again somewhere sometimes between 18 and 24 months. And then what people most commonly think of as before school, they think of kindergarten shots. That's what everybody talks about. The vaccines I have to get to be able to go to kindergarten. And so there are a few that are boosters from the ones you received as a baby to make sure that you've got enough, your bodies can fight off some of these common infections. Okay. And the reason why we do that is because those diseases still exist in the community. So one of the most common things that we vaccinate against that we see in periods or pop up from time to time is pertussis or whooping cough. Okay. And so that's a really common one, and we want to make sure that babies are vaccinated against it, and then we also want to make sure that bigger kids like our kindergartners are vaccinated against it, even teenagers and adults. And so You'll see that's a common one. We also do the chickenpox vaccine and measles, mumps, and rubella because we do from time to time see outbreaks of those as well. Then kids after kindergarten generally come back again when they're middle schoolers at around 12, around, people think of it at 6th grade that they come in. And then even in high school now. So when you and I were in high school, the most we got was our tetanus shot. Yep, everybody got their tetanus shot. And so we still do that, but we have a few other ones that we do too. We have a vaccine against meningitis, and we have another vaccine against what's called human papillomavirus. And so we want to get those vaccines done as well. We know that kids, when they're at school, especially when they're younger, like when they're in kindergarten, aren't as good about washing their hands and not touching each other and coughing on each other. And so we want to make sure that we vaccinate them against everything we possibly can so that they can stay healthy. The other vaccine that we recommend once you're 6 months of age is you're getting a regular influenza vaccine or a flu shot. And that's always available in the fall because flu season is, and we want to gear up for flu season, which is in the wintertime. So we recommend that yearly. And that's because the flu changes every year. So we don't have it's not one single shot we can give you that will cover you forever, but we know that there are multiple different forms of influenza that come along, and so it's important that you get that every year to help protect you against the flu. So those are the big ones for vaccines.
And so for the chickenpox vaccine, does that mean the kids won't ever get chickenpox? Or
That's a great question. So the majority of kids will not ever get chickenpox who get the vaccine. There are some children that may get it, but they're going to get it. It's not going to be as serious. And a lot of people used to think that, you know what, chickenpox isn't a big deal. You're out, you've got a big rash, it's really annoying. But actually, yes, that's part of it. But some kids we know can get much sicker. So if you have a condition called eczema where you have dry, irritated skin, those kids can get it such that they ended up getting bloodstream infections due to getting another they can get a bacteria on top of that. So it can get much more serious for them. And even kids who are healthy and don't have eczema, don't have other things, can end up getting meningitis, so an infection in your spinal cord fluid, or encephalitis, and some other things. And so, what most people think of as it's not that big of a deal. The reason why we vaccinate against some of these diseases, and the majority of them, is that we know that you can get very sick and even die from them. Yeah, and that's the case with influenza as well. So yeah.
And I asked that because I had the chickenpox in 8th grade. So as a 14-year-old had chickenpox, and it was the worst experience of my life. I missed 2 weeks of school, was very, very sick. So I always said, well, I'd like my children to get it when they're younger. Because I've heard when they're younger, it's not quite so bad. But I didn't realize that it was now being vaccinated against. So something I've learned.
It is.
Thank you.
And when you're younger, when you're much younger as a baby, to get it is much worse. And so, so that's why we really don't want people to get it. Or if you're around other people who don't have they can't fight off infection very well, either because their immune system doesn't function very well because that's the way their body works, or because they're receiving medication, like they have leukemia or some kind of cancer that they're being treated for. Those people are much more at risk, and some elderly folks are much more at risk for chickenpox, and we certainly don't want them to get it as well.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about some of the myths around immunizations. You hear that people don't want to get their children immunized.
Right.
That's the word.
Yes.
Because they don't want their children to become autistic or develop special needs or die because they're getting their shots.
Right.
So can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. So there's been a lot of research that's looked at that, and there have been studies that have come out since the claims initially about does the measles, mumps, and rubella shot lead to autism? There have been studies that have looked at that and have not shown that that's true. That they don't that, and even the 2 of the 3 people that did that study initially have since said, we revoke that study. We don't believe that study anymore, and that there were some problems with the study itself. So. So I think that's a concern. Now, I think what happens is we give the measles, mumps, and rubella shot at 15 months. That's a time when, about 12 to 15 months, and then again when they're a little bit older in kindergarten. that 12 to 15 month time period is a time where kids are starting to walk, they're starting to talk, we're starting to pick up a lot of problems or it can be a time where we can pick up problems in their development that we may not have seen before.
Okay.
And we're not, we're still working on trying to figure out what causes autism. And so there's a lot of questions around that. But then there are other people that are concerned that we give these vaccines and that it may, in fact, weaken the immune system. The vaccines that we give today are much more sort of refined and cleaner than the vaccines. When you and I were in little and we got vaccines, those vaccines contained a lot of extra things in them that made our immune system respond. And that's actually not the case anymore. Really, the vaccines are really targeted just to the disease, so just to measles or pertussis or tetanus, if you will. Okay. And so some of the side effects are much less than they were then. And so we're actually exposing kids to a lot less what we call antigens, or what makes your immune system fight. We expose them to a lot less than we did when we were kids. And so that's actually better, and we're able to protect them more. Okay. The other piece of that too is that what we know is that if the more people we vaccinate, we actually create something called herd immunity, where it protects those who potentially aren't vaccinated. Mm. However, the benefit of that will go away if we drop down in about the mid 80s, 80%. If like about 85% of the people are only that many people are vaccinated, if 15% are not, then that herd immunity starts to go away, and so then you don't necessarily know when you send your kids to school who's vaccinated and who's not. So if you say, well, I don't want to vaccinate my children because I think other people are vaccinated in my community, you don't really know that necessarily. And so I think when you're putting kids in a situation with lots of other kids, you certainly want them to be as healthy and have every shot at being as healthy as possible. And so that's why I think we get concerned that when we stop immunizing children, that we know we put them at risk for other illnesses that we could protect them from.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what are some other things other than getting their regular vaccines and shots on a consistent basis, going to the pediatrician according to that schedule as preventative, like you said? We shouldn't wait until our kids are sick or use the emergency room just because they're sick, but having them connected to a pediatrician that sees them, that's able to then not only track their health, but their development as well, and can make recommendations if things are of a concern. So that's really helpful for a parent as well. And then helps as kids are getting transitioning into school and kindergarten, and that they can have early services or supports and all of that other stuff. So what can parents do to keep their kids healthy once they get to kindergarten and are now being exposed to lots of germs, some that may have been exposed before and others may not. So and I shared with you the experience that my daughter, despite being in daycare, still missed 10 days of kindergarten. Just because she seemed to pick up everything that came in there. So
everything that came by her.
Yes.
I think it's some of those general things we think of as parents and as pediatricians. It's just the basic things about teaching kids good hygiene. So washing your hands after you go to the bathroom, washing your hands before you eat, making sure that you're not coughing in your hands. Sneeze. They teach kids. We teach people to cough and sneeze in your elbow so that you're not coughing right on your hand. And then I go and touch my pencils and my papers and everything in the classroom. And then I think some other really basic things that sometimes we forget how much they impact their health are getting a good night's rest. I think the schools are great about it around about reminding people back to school and around testing time about how important it is to get a good night's sleep. And I think it's good for kids to stay on that routine. I know it's at my house. I have like I shared with you, a 5-year-old, a 7-year-old, and an 11-year-old. And the summertime is, can we stay up, Mom? Can we stay up late?
No.
But the problem becomes, and we see this much more in the teenage years, is that they get off their sleep cycle. And so if you're staying up late at night and you're sleeping in during the day, then it becomes really difficult to get yourself back adjusted once school starts. Getting up at 6 in the morning when you have to be at school at 7 is really hard when you stayed up till 3. And so trying to keep some semblance of a good sleep routine, even when you're on breaks in summer, is really helpful for kids, because kids and adults, we all function much better on a routine. And then I think the other piece is eating healthy and staying active. Those things, your body just works much better when you've had a good night's rest. You're eating the right kind of balanced diet, and not eating a bunch of junk, which I think some of us fall into that trap when we get busy. But trying to have things at home that are easy for kids to eat, like fruits and vegetables and in the refrigerator and ready to go, or applesauce and things that are better for them, rather than grabbing a bag of chips or grabbing pop and soda. Drinking lots of water and those kinds of things are much better than grabbing the pop and the juice that they might want to go for. So trying to have that more available for them and helping them make those choices and learn that from a young age, even in kindergarten and even when they're little, when they're toddlers, getting them to like those kinds of foods rather than sweet things and chips and stuff really helps translate later on, because they'll carry those habits forever. Yeah. And I think, and then the activity piece, the more you play and run and exercise and do those things helps you develop a love for that stuff, for those types of activities, that then later on translates into being active and healthy, rather than sitting in front of the TV and watching TV and playing video games all day, which we know that kids who are more active are going to grow up to be healthier adults. They're not going to have the weight problems that we see with our adults who Indiana has one of the leading states in obesity. And so if we can get them on the right track early, and like we said, being healthy helps you in school no matter what, because the better you feel when you go to school, the more you can focus and pay attention and actually be there to learn and be present. And I think adults feel that way at work too. I know I feel much better when I had a good night's sleep rather than if I was up late because of something else. So
exactly.
I think developing those habits early on and teaching kids about health early on serves them well, no matter how old they are. Okay. I think those are key things.
And I think our community is starting to do a really great job with fresh fruits and vegetables.
Yes.
Because I know a lot of our communities are what they call food deserts. So there's not grocery stores. There's a lot of convenience stores. Which you can't get anything but junk in those. And so it's how you kind of keep your kids out of there. But then you have to have other options. And so I know IU has the Garden on the Go bus that goes to a lot of communities to deliver fresh vegetables at a very affordable price. I think it's called Urban Acre Farms now on the Central Greens property, where you can go once a week. I think Thursdays from 4:30 to 6:30, I believe, and get a $10 bag of fresh fruits and vegetables and eggs, straight from the chickens.
I know.
So I think, for our viewers that are watching, really look on the website, go on the internet, make some phone calls, and find where there are places within your community, because all of these urban gardens are popping up all over the place, and there's lots of opportunities to get fresh fruits and vegetables, and then programs to help you fix them, because that's one of my things. It's like, well, I know how to steam a few things, but if you put an asparagus or zucchini in front of me, or
I'm not quite sure what to do.
I'm not too sure what to do and what to put in it, but I know that there are programs out there that can help folks to know how to fix those fruits and vegetables in a healthy way, in a good way, taste good, mix them in with stuff for kids who are picky eaters, and all of that kind of stuff. And I would say
it's amazing what you can hide in a smoothie or something. Like you can hide a lot of vegetables like carrots in a smoothie because they're sweeter, and so and I would have never believed it, but kale you can hide in things if you and that's such great nutrition for kids. And I had not been to Indy Urban Acres until recently and was amazed that they're all doing all this great outreach and farming for right here in the community, so that people can come and get that food that they wouldn't necessarily have known existed. So that's I think a great partnership with the Parks Department and everything for the city.
I think so too. So again, it's just like it's available. Folks just have to sometimes look and ask and be proactive. In order to have healthy children, we have to do what we have to do, and that's stepping outside that. And, there's a lot with the Monon Trail, the
There
Cultural
is.
Trail. There's a lot of places to walk now, to ride the
Right.
bike share program.
Right.
Where you can take your kids and hop on a bike, was it for $8
I think,
a day
it's
or something
very
like that,
reasonable.
and ride around the city. So
Right.
all of those things are good,
Right.
healthy activities.
They
So,
are, definitely.
any other things that you'd like to share
Sure.
to help parents know how to keep their kids healthy?
Healthy.
And the other thing I wanted to say too is, and if your kids are not healthy or
Right.
they are sick, what should you do in terms of how long should you keep them home from school
Right.
so that it doesn't then infect other people?
I think that's a great question. So, so I think that the standard, if they are sick, I think it's good to call your pediatrician or family doctor, talk to them. Sometimes they think it'll be appropriate for them to be seen, but I think it's good for you to have that conversation to decide. You may think that they need to be seen, and that's totally appropriate for you to bring them in. Generally, the schools and daycares recommend that they don't have a fever for 24 hours, and I think that's appropriate because, generally kids when they have a fever are infectious and they could, are contagious to other kids, and we certainly, want to try to stop the spread of any germs that we can. So sending them to school when they still have a fever isn't a good idea. And I know some people want to give them medicine and bring their fever down, but that's still, while that may make them feel a little better and bring their fever down, still they can spread the germs. Yeah. And I think, like I said, I think when kids don't feel good, they don't do well at school. They just don't perform very well. They feel miserable. It's hard for them to learn when they don't feel good. So I think getting, once they are sick and not feeling good, keeping them at home and letting them get a lot of rest and plenty of fluids and getting them to the doctor is a good idea so that we can make sure it's something that doesn't need to be treated. If it's an ear infection or strep throat and needs antibiotics, that would totally be appropriate. Most colds and coughs and things like that are caused by viruses and don't need antibiotics, but they may benefit from having a little bit of Tylenol or ibuprofen or something to make them feel better at least. And so, though I think when kids are not feeling good, and especially if they are throwing up or having diarrhea, we want to keep them out of school because those things tend to spread like wildfire in a daycare or a school setting, and at home too. So if your kids are at home and are sick and you're taking care of them, it's really important for you to take care of yourself and make sure you're washing your hands because mom and dad don't want to get sick when everybody else is sick because then it sort of falls apart.
Yes, it does.
So keeping everybody healthy at home is important. I also think the other thing that we have is that there are kids that have chronic illnesses like asthma or attention deficit disorder or other illnesses that they need to be regularly seen by their doctor to make sure they're doing okay and make sure they've got their medicines that they need for their asthma or diabetes or their eczema. So that's really important, I think, to get yourself on a schedule. If your doctor recommends you're being seen every 3 to 4 months because you have asthma, then making that a priority for your child because we want them to be able to do everything else that they should normally be able to do. And some of those diseases, and I think asthma is a great example of an illness that some children have to be on medicine all the time so that they can stay healthy and that they, if they get a cold, that tends to make their asthma flare up, and we don't want that for them. So getting them there regularly, making sure they're on track. I think summertime is also a great time to get your back to school physical. Most kids who are in sports, it's required, so they got to go see the doctor anyways. And it's not just about getting your vaccines and getting your checkup. It's also a lot of times we talk about how are things going, especially in teenagers. How are things going for school? How are you doing with your friends and your social group? Mm-hmm. Are there questions that you have for us, as doctors? And we can help talk with parents about how to talk with their teenagers about things like sex and drugs and things that people get a little nervous about talking about, but are really important to address with those kids because we want to help them protect themselves as well and stay healthy as teenagers. So I think those are good things to be thinking about seeing your doctor for too.
Okay. A question I had when we talk about hand washing.
Yes.
Hand sanitizers have become like the thing.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about, is hand sanitizing just as good as hand washing?
Yes. So for the most part, yes. And the reason why is it kills most of the germs. The one time you should really wash with soap and water is if you're cleaning up diarrhea or if you have diarrhea, because it will not get rid of the diarrhea on your hands. So you need to wash. Yeah, you need to wash. Doesn't get rid of the grime. And hand sanitizer is great because it's quick and it's fast, and a lot, especially with little kids, because they may not be good about washing their hands for long enough to make sure they're really clean. So hand sanitizer works really well for that. And that's a great thing to have at home. A lot of times they have it at school, so kids can easily get a squirt of it on their hands. I still think it's a good idea. After I use it frequently, and I think a lot of people use it frequently, you just need to go wash at some point because it gets feels kind of gummy on your hands, but it still is effective and works quite well. So for most things, it's going to be great. But if it's involving diarrhea, you need to go wash to protect yourself.
That's good to know.
Yeah,
because I've heard different things, and I've heard people say, "Well, hand sanitizer really doesn't work; it just spreads the germs around."
No, it's very good. And it's great. Like I said, for little kids because they typically don't have the patience to wash their hands very well.
No, they don't.
So
when they come out, my son comes out and he's still got like globs of soap like in the middle of his hand. I'm like,
how did that happen, right?
You didn't do any of this.
Yes, I see dirty fingers all the time.
Yes, on the top, like do the tops also.
Not just this part. Yes, exactly.
Well, how do families find pediatricians, get connected to a good pediatrician, and where should they even go to start the search,
looking,
particularly for families who may not have private insurance?
Right.
Where can they go?
So I think there are lots of resources out there for families. We at Riley are now not just thinking about being in the building of Riley, but we're trying to really cover the state of Indiana and be, and including definitely Indianapolis, to be a physician for all children in Indiana, not just kids that are the chronically ill children. So there's a Riley Physicians, which are groups of pediatricians around the state and around the city that are part of this Riley Physician Network, so they could certainly go on the IU Health webpage for that. There are other opportunities other options with groups like HealthNet, has pediatricians all throughout the Marion County community and has locations on the east side, the west side, north and south, so all over Indianapolis. There are other, Eskenazi has pediatricians as well. So I think there are plenty of pediatricians and family physicians here in Indianapolis for families and surrounding. I think we're fairly lucky to have so many physicians who are very good at seeing children. We have a great family medicine program too, through IU Health as well, and so they are all open to children. Or many of these practices are open to children who don't have insurance, private insurance. And so really they've all made a commitment to see the children in Indiana and Indianapolis too and help. So, because I think that is a challenge at times for families to know where to go to find them.
And I know from just we work a lot with Eskenazi, that the thing is that, how to keep families, generally speaking, out of the emergency room.
Right, exactly.
And really being connected to a clinic, a doctor, where your children can be seen, you can be seen, is really, really important to go for that prevention, preventative checkup. And even if they're sick, sometimes things can wait until the next day. You call and you can get in. I never have a problem getting my sick child into the pediatrician. They always have, same day appointments for that. So. That's preferred over having to go and sit in the emergency room, for hours and hours and hours for what you find out is just a cold or even an ear infection, which is not technically an emergency.
Right, and really your pediatrician or family physician knows your child the best. Yeah. And even if you can't see that person, you can see someone in the practice, that's still, they're connected to their health record and everything like that. And so I think as pediatricians, we would all prefer to see our own patients. And certainly emergency departments serve a great purpose. We want them to be able to take care of the patients that need them the most, but it can, I think for our families sometimes it can be quite a challenge to end up in an emergency room in the evening when sometimes you could call your pediatrician and sometimes they will say, no, I think you need to go. That's appropriate, totally appropriate for you to do. But if you could talk to your pediatrician or someone covering for their group and just talk through it and they could say, yeah, I think here, step 2, 1, 2, and 3,
and then call in the morning.
call us in the
Yep,
morning,
exactly.
and we'll get you in to be seen, because I think that's really the philosophy of primary care docs like pediatricians and family practitioners. We want to see those patients. We want to see our patients so that then we just know what's going on with them and can help, because we generally know you better than maybe the emergency
room
department
doctor.
does.
Exactly.
Yes, yeah.
Well, thank you so much,
You're
Dr.
welcome.
Cesana. Really appreciate it. Appreciate all the information you shared with
Thank
us.
you.
And hopefully all of our guests watching the show today
Yes.
found this to be very helpful information, and just appreciate you tuning in to another episode of Our Kids, Our Families, Our Communities. Thank you very much.